experts in those areas. To start with Ms. Charlotte Taylor. She's the Chief of Social Policy at UNICEF. She has quite extensive experience in social policy, specifically social protection, public finance, and research. She has worked in Rwanda for the past 10 years, even more than 10 years, 8 years, around 10 years, in the development cooperation and now in the UN. We welcome you, Charlotte. In this session also, we are going to be with a wizard in data, Mrs. Wiman Teres. She's the Director of Data Evolution and Big Data at the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. She has quite extensive experience in systems and data and worked for the government for many years. Welcome, Teres. We are also honored to be with Dr. Christine Niza, who is the head of ICT in education under Rwanda Basic Education Board, REB. She has many years in education sector, and she hold a PhD in computer systems engineering. She has been in this academic and teaching. In this roundtable discussion, we shall be covering a number of topics, covering financing for social sectors, data for programs monitoring, and digital development for leveraging in reducing the loss, education loss observed during this COVID pandemic. However, before starting to think about even their thinking or to reflect their experience, I wanted first to probably take you through or to remind you what we call human capital in the sense of level of national planning, but also in the sense of the global uncertainties around human capital development. We all know that investment in people is key driver for sustainable and resilient growth. But by what we call human capital development, we talk about investments in health. This includes also nutrition, that was discussed earlier. It also includes education, but also think about early childhood development and social protection to support low-income households, including children, to cope with different vulnerabilities. However, we could see that across the world, that the world is facing unprecedented challenges in multiple ends. I will highlight four. One, the COVID pandemic, which we have faced in different dimensions for the past 2 years. Two, the high rate of inflation, which is causing what we now call global living cost crisis. The third point is insecurity. That we know that in the spotlight, Ukraine war is being talked about everywhere. However, I would like to say that even in the neighboring countries, the situation is at alarming stage. The last but not the least is the climate change effect. We all know that in different dimensions, climate change is affecting us, and more specifically, low-income households. All these four dimensions I mentioned, they affect in different modes, in different ways, what you call physical space, and the ability to achieve the human capital development. Another point I want to mention is that the human capital development is now one of the major priorities by the government of Rwanda through the NST1. As you can read it, you will see three main points which I would like you to probably take note of. One is to eradicate malnutrition. Two is to enhance the demographic dividend through health. Three is the demographic dividend through improved access to quality education. The panelists here, they will be reflecting on those three areas that are reflected in the national development plans, but also trying to link with the global uncertainties which I already mentioned. Let me start the discussion by addressing my first question to Charlotte Taylor, who will try to take us through the broad discussion of the financing for human capital. We will be happy to hear from you about how and what UNICEF, as one of the development partners, is positioning itself in order to support the government of Rwanda to strengthen the financing landscape for human capital development. Thank you, Charlotte.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm very happy to be with you today, and I would like to thank my colleague Emmanuel for moderating this session. So, in terms of what UNICEF does, maybe I'll start a bit by sharing some observations on trends and challenges that we see when it comes to investment in social sectors. You might be aware that UNICEF works a lot in social sectors. We are covering, a lot of the support to line ministries working in WASH, education, social protection, health, nutrition, early childhood development, and this gives us a very good angle into understanding how the budget is allocated across key sectors that support priorities for children. So Emmanuel and I work a lot on budget analysis. What we do is that we take the finance law that's published every year and we observe and analyze trends, budget trends, allocations provided to these key line ministries and social sectors. Our observation in the past 5 years is that as the general budget envelope continues to increase, in nominal terms, sector allocations for priority sectors for children have also increased, although not always at the same pace as the general budget envelope. And of course, we know that COVID brought a lot of challenges. We were able to observe that additional investments were made in the health sector to address the public health needs of the pandemic, and more loans were taken to support, for example, the vaccination program, which was a big success in Rwanda. We also see that trends in other sectors have been fluctuating. For example, when we look at program level information or sub-program level, there's sometimes a bit of a fluctuation. We can see that even though allocations for the education sector, for example, continue to evolve on a positive trend, certain gaps exist within the programs, for example, when we talk of teacher development and quality enhancement programs. So this is part of the analysis that we do. One positive observation as well throughout COVID is that a lot of investments were made to scale up social protection programs. And this was thanks to the ability of the government of Rwanda to mobilize additional resources through its donors to support the emergency response for the economic and social protection recovery in particular. The question is, of course, how do we sustain these investments? Because as Emmanuel said, the fiscal space is narrowing. And the question is, how do we look for fiscal options going forward to sustain all these gains that Rwanda has achieved in the framework of the MDGs, and now more recently in its path to achieving SDGs. So one thing UNICEF is currently doing is that we're working on a fiscal space analysis for social sectors with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. We're trying to get a better understanding of the budget trends in traditional social sectors, but also looking specifically at emerging areas like ECD and climate change, which we have not really been analyzing closely as of yet as UNICEF, but it's becoming, of course, an area of growing interest. And we're trying to have a look at the different plans that have been developed at sector level and how they've been costed, so that we can also estimate what is the finance gap to achieve SDGs in these sectors. And with the help of the consultants who are working with us on this assignment, we are looking at whether there's any room to consider new tax policy options or expanding the tax base. We know it's already very tight, so we have to be realistic. How we can continue sensitizing the donor community and attracting more donor financing to Rwanda, also from emerging donors. And then, of course, comes the question of efficiency, which is really important to consider as well. And I think David spoke earlier today in his presentation about prioritization. What could we do better with the budget that we have already? I think that's a critical question we all have to ask ourselves. And what I would like to say here as well is that in Rwanda, the donor coordination setup is really very well established. You probably all know that we have a development partners coordination group at the level of Ministry of Finance, and then every line ministry also has a sector working group, which is further declined into thematic technical working groups. And I want to say that I think we all have a collective responsibility here to be active members of those groups, work on evidence generation that can help policymakers make better decisions, considering we are all working with constrained budgets. And even, a lot of donors and development partners are facing challenges due to the economic downturn caused by COVID and more recently Ukraine. So I think we all have to think very well together. How can we make the best of the resources we have while continuing to look for innovative financing options? And I will talk a little bit more about specific assignments or tools that UNICEF is rolling out to support the government and its partners in generating a bit more evidence to support this policy decision-making process. For example, at the moment, we just completed an investment case for community health, trying to assess for every dollar spent in the community health program, what is the expected return, not only on human capital outcomes, but on the economy at large. What would be the cost of inaction? And how can we support costed plans for scaling up these programs going forward? We are also working a lot on, complex issues like stunting reduction. And at the moment, we're working closely with the National Child Development Agency, NCDA, providing technical assistance to enhance the integrated planning and budgeting aspect of, tackling these multi-sector issues, such as stunting. We also, in light of this, are engaging the Ministry of Finance on the whole agenda of performance-based budgeting, which started a few years ago in Rwanda. And already more than 10 years ago, the government started rolling out program-based budgeting. So I think it's important to continue thinking of how we can strengthen these foundations so that they also serve us in this landscape and environment where we are facing, hard decisions in terms of investment. And I have to say that with performance-based budgeting now being rolled out, we really have an opportunity to better link investments to outcome and to be clear on the institutional accountability against these different outcomes. I don't want to take too much time because I know we have other panelists, but I would just add one word on the private sector side of things, because I think this is something that we all need to support going forward. UNICEF 6-7 years ago started working with NAEB and the Private Sector Foundation to identify how key industries could support investments towards SDG outcomes. And we started with the tea industry, piloting an investment case where tea companies would invest in some infrastructure to provide ECG services to the children of their employees. And soon enough, we realized that this was really something that brought a lot of potential in terms of economic productivity, because the mothers ended up working more hours, being more productive, which of course was leading to more economic profit for the tea companies, as well as the children were well taken care of, stimulated, had access to early learning, good nutrition. And at the end of the day, we did make a business case to assess a bit, the cost of this investment. And let me just say that the economic return was much higher than the initial investment that was required from these companies. And this approach, which we call the shared value approach, is now being rolled out in the mining sector and in the rice sector as well. And then finally, I will just end on one note about internet connectivity and digitalization. UNICEF partnered with the ITU, the International Telecom Union, in 2019 to support a big initiative globally, and Rwanda is one of the first beneficiaries in terms of school connectivity. So we're currently piloting the rollout of school connectivity, including the provision of devices for teachers in 63 schools, providing all the capital expenditure to set things up, and supporting the cost for the first year of operations. And at the same time, of course, we realized that connecting all schools to the internet is costly and requires a lot of initial investment, but also a sustainable financing model going forward. So we're working currently on developing this sustainable financing model so that we can attract private sector, hopefully, to also be part of this journey with us and with the government of Rwanda. So let me just end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlotte, for that very good elaboration. And I like the point you concluded to on internet in the schools. Let me again go to Dr. Christine to maybe follow up on that by asking her to provide more details about the plans that the Rwanda Education Board, in collaboration of course with NEDIC, that you are trying to put in place in order to leverage on digital technologies to reduce the learning loss that we encountered during the COVID period. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and good morning, everyone. I've just come a bit late. So regarding the loss that we had during COVID, I think it's well known that education was one of the sectors that was mostly hit hard by COVID. If you remember well, we had about 7 months school closure, and actually for lower learners, we had, I think, 11 months closure. So during that not the whole lockdown, but the 7 months closure, we've been delivering learning remotely and using different channels. We've used TVs, radio by broadcasting different lessons that we recorded. But remember that this was somehow one-way teaching, so there was no chance for learners to ask questions, for example. As you know, teaching and learning is a very interactive activity. We also actually had, even before COVID, digital teaching and learning materials, but available online and available again on smart or a digital device, excluding feature phones. And when you look at the numbers of households that could access such devices, it was quite low. I think about 11 or 12% of households were able to at least access a computer, according to EACV, I think 2018. And when you look at the household that could at least access a radio, most of them were part of the radio within the feature phones, the non-smartphones, or gatosh as we normally call it. It was, I think, close to 75% of the household. to understand that any information that was broadcasted using radio was at least information that is accessed by, let's say, the most, accessed by many people, or learners, as that was our target. So we tried also to use SMS-based learning, whereby we customized lessons into short SMSs followed by quizzes, and this was zero rated so that an SMS was not costing anything, whether using both telecoms companies we have here, MTN as well as Airtel. But again, there was some loss because SMS was not was not capturing as much as we wish to offer to learners. After when schools resumed, we tried to sort of catch up and raise, let's say, learners that were sort of behind, trying to help them to reach the same level as others, because learning at home or remotely, some of the students actually were able to improve. But as education must be equity to all learners, we could not let those who advanced to move forward and let others, lagging behind like that. So we try to raise the level so that at least they can, try to recover what was lost. So we've introduced what we call remedial teaching, whereby we had some time to help learners that were lagging behind so that they can catch up and reach at least the same level as others. And the same program is continuing, and it's institutionalized into the schedule of everyday learning periods, and starting from the next academic year in September, we are having at least 1 hour a day to help learners that are lagging somehow behind, and teachers will be supported with that, whether incentivized, being incentivized in doing that work, which is sort of extra, and it may even induce to work during weekends, because that hour, which is dedicated to slow learners, let's say those who lag behind, may make others again to lose something because they are not running all the hours dedicated every day for learning. So we think that, first of all, that's one of the ways we think can raise up the loss we had. And then digitally, we are also making these materials available, again digitally, and we are customizing so much so that even young learners can grasp quickly the learning by making like entertainment, educating through entertainment, whereby young learners in nursery and lower primary, this is like 3 years old till 10 years, till 9 years old, so that we take what they're supposed to learn, every subject, and we make into what we used to know, like a cartoon, and they can follow from chapter 1 till the last chapter of the book, and like that, they're entertained, but at the same time they are learning. And this is available also online, as well as broadcasted on available channels we have in Rwanda. So adding to that, if there are losses, we have materials that are digital. And again, as I said, there is a challenge of access because of the availability of device, availability of connectivity, and things like that. So we also have been working with partners, and I think UNICEF mentioned one of the projects we are working together, whereby we making sure that we connect schools on better connectivity, because we also have connectivity in schools, but this is not enough, and again, not reaching all schools. But through that project of Giga Connect, the internet that's being provided to schools is quite enough to serve the whole premise of the school, and actually outside the community that is around the school is also able to, to get access to that internet. And we think that the community can leverage on that connectivity and do some of the digital transactions, and we're looking into also actually engage that community within the school through digital ambassadors, so that the infrastructure that we have there can be used by the community outside of the school. Most of the schools we have are day school, and not all the time learners and teachers are in schools. So the time they are not there, so why not also support the community? Maybe that was a bit, but I think it's also another way of, we were talking about the loss that we have, I think learning loss, but that also, that part helps the community. I'm talking about is the parents, is the brothers of the learners. If they come into the school, they get trained digitally, and they can again go back home, support learners at home. We had actually an issue during COVID, even parents who were able to access internet, access everything, devices, they were not able to support their children to learn, and they were like always calling for support from teachers. So we shall know that teaching is, of course, teachers' responsibility, but also parents' responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Christine, for this presentation. You concluded a very good point of dual role of parents and the teachers and the institutions. It then takes me back to thinking in terms of data. In NISR reflections and plans, can maybe Teresa help us to understand how actually we're supporting the sector ministries to increase their capacity, to make sure that they have that ability to monitor regularly on the changes that are taking place, especially learning, quality of learning, attendance, dropout, among other issues of human capital, not necessarily on education, but you talk about even the social protection, talk about health, as I earlier talked about.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I have to confess that I'm not statistics background, so I'm more technology than statistics. So I will tend to technology. Yes, but NISR has since long time ago invested in capacity building for different, be it ministries, departments and agencies, public, but also we train private sectors and civil societies to be data literate. But I will also say that our capacities are somehow limited because of the mandate. So I also call upon partners, EPRN members, all the researchers in-house, but also those who are listening to us, to partner and work on capacity development. I can see in the room there are many young people. So we need to be, I am amazed at how we are talking figures, numbers, but we still have a long way to go. So it's a call for everyone here to, mainly experts in data analysis, data literacy, to as our partners like UNICEF, they do it so to keep training people, even citizens, because we have different audience in data. So they need to know, they need to understand what figures tell. We might understand the charts here, but many people, we have different products on the website, we share microdata, but we feel like they are still somehow underutilized. So we need partnership around capacity development. Among the products we have in capacity development, we have like reading data with children, where I think UNICEF is a partner in that project. So we encourage children to start understanding numbers. We also have training, or we train journalists. We have, those are regular trainings that happen annually, but in different, depending on, whenever we have a new report out, we have those sessions. We also train teachers, academicians, researchers, but also we have different outreach to secondary school, where there are some schools that have been so innovative that they now have statistics. How do they call them? Statistic group. So they start. They are interested in statistics, and some of them they even start plan to join statistics in undergraduate. That is something we are proud of. And now I'm going to go to technology. So I will not say that we all know that government of Rwanda has been knew the advantages of technology long way before COVID. Though maybe COVID came when we still have areas of improvement, but we knew since long time ago that technology is a booster. So even NISA was not left behind. They plan to embark on the journey of data revolution. So in 2019, government of Rwanda offered to host the regional hub for big data for Africa that was supposed to be hosted at NISA, but due to COVID, we took some time. So the department came in live in October last year. So we are operational since October last year. But so far we have started having in-house trainings and some limited regional trainings on around data revolution. When I say data revolution, is as my colleague said, we have different data sources available. NISA used to have surveys, to conduct surveys to correct data purposely for specific indicators. But as we now better understand due to COVID, we need real-time analysis, we need real-time data. So we already have data available, be it in transactional data, be it in maybe big data like satellite imagery. So we have many more indicators we can compute using alternative data sources that are available. So that is our focus. The department, that is, I may say it's still a newborn because it's less than a year at NISL. We have the mandate to modernize statistics, whereby we leverage data science techniques, but also use alternative data sources like satellite imageries, like transactional data, like UNICEF said they are partnered with ITU to bring internet to schools. That will be a new source for data. That is real-time data that can inform like school dropouts without waiting for some time like for surveys, because some surveys will take like 3 years to come out. So we need to leverage available data sources to complement to complement available statistics from surveys. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I think you have set very good stage around the data, and young people here present, there is, you understood well that there's an avenue for further learning and further contribution. As we continue our discussion, probably heading somewhere toward the end, but not the end per se, I wanted to probably ask both Charlotte and Dr. Christine to probably zoom in their discussion about how do we, or how can we ensure equity around these human capital outcomes. By equity, I mean we see some differences. If we try to analyze data, we can see the low income quintile groups having poor performance around some several indicators, be it dropout, be it nutrition, malnutrition, be it health. But how then can we, using different plans and programs and data, make sure that we closely monitor equity, and then we ensure timely remedial mechanism, if I can call it. Maybe I start with Charlotte and then Dr. Christine.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I think that's a very important question. And maybe I'll provide a response from the social protection angle, because we provide a lot of support to the social protection sector as UNICEF. We've actually supported the government since the very beginning of the VUP, and we've had the privilege of working with Minalog, with LODA for many years now on the design, pilot, and scale-up of various VUP schemes, both from the side of safety nets and from the side as well of the cash plus or complementary services. And when it comes to human capital, I mean, we talk a lot about investment in education, investment in health. We hear a lot as well about the transition from school to jobs. It's really a big discussion that has been at the core of the NST1 these last few years. And here I would like to mention that under the VUP and the complementary services, there is what we call a livelihood enhancement program, which caters for the needs of the VUP beneficiaries and gives them an opportunity to get access to skills development, have access to finance, access to employment. And I think as much as we've seen a lot of investment in the safety nets of the VUP over the last few years, and much of these safety nets were even scaled up during COVID, I think it's important to remember that cash support alone doesn't lift people out of poverty. All the complementary services are also key and have to go hand in hand with the cash support. There's global evidence suggested that this twofold approach is really necessary to ensure sustainable graduation from extreme poverty. So I think it's really important for us to continue dialogue with development partners, donors, governments, so that these livelihood enhancement programs that really target the most vulnerable and are designed to give them access to the same opportunities when it comes to building their skills, building their capacity, setting up businesses. My main point here is to say we just need to make sure that we continue the conversation so that these investments continue and are scaled up, and that we also invest in a strong monitoring and evaluation system to really assess how these programs are working, are they effective, and are they contributing to the graduation agenda, or whether they need to be adjusted, tweaked, yeah, that's what I want to say actually. Whether they need to be adjusted, and how can we further support the government in making the necessary changes and fine-tuning this approach so that it can be gradually scaled up. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte, and I'm glad you talked about financial inclusion for families. And we've seen that learning loss sectors sometimes are caused by dropouts, and dropouts are caused by family status, because learners are not having all the requirements or the needs to go to school, and they decide, they don't decide when the family, makes them stay in other things so that they cannot go to school regularly. So, for running or UDL principles, whereby we try, to cover all aspects that learners, when I'm speaking learners, actually there are teachers also that really need this. So it's the same way we do that, so that we increase it at least for that specific cluster of teachers and learners. And to that, I'm glad that there is a Marrakesh Treaty that the government of Rwanda has already ratified, and we have in the Gazette almost 2 years back, so that all the materials that, or all information actually, not even for school, that is published, it must be include, or it must support people with visual impairments. So we make sure that we follow that principle, so that all the content that goes into schools, is catering for those learners. And also there's another part of learners with autism. We have this autism spectrum disorder. We have different levels, but at least we were able to collaborate with, we have schools, a few schools that are government subsidized, but we're also looking into supporting with the private schools that are supporting such learners, so that these also are not left out. So I think that's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very elaborate and detailed in terms of the programs and plans available for the component of equity and inclusion. Before maybe handing over the floor to the members here present, I wanted you probably to reflect a bit on, we see the challenges, we know what is going on, but are there something we can talk about, like opportunities that are available to enhance human capital development? I will start with Therese and then we'll continue.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Yes, there are many opportunities. Wherever there are problems, they rely also opportunities. So it's up to us to dig deeper and find those opportunities. I might maybe highlight some within ourselves. We are open for collaboration. So we produce data products, so we call upon partners, researchers, academicians to collaborate on projects, so that we come up with different insights. Because normally when NISR produce a data product, we have specific indicators. But with shared microdata, you can find different insights. So we are open for collaboration. There's also, with this new department, we have a data science campus at NISL, so we call upon researchers, mainly focusing on data science methodologies. There will be many opportunities in that area, whereby we can leverage the use of non-traditional data. When I say non-traditional data, I think you understand it's those other data sources that are already available, be it Earth observation data, transactional data, as other speakers said, camera data, telecom data. All those data sets have information. So there will be many opportunities in around that area. There's also trainings. There are also available trainings that we keep, and we will always prepare for different audiences, be it maybe decision makers. They need different stories than citizens. They need different stories than researchers. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Charlotte?
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I think the main message I have on this question is that in terms of opportunities, I think Rwanda was already very advanced in digitalization before COVID happened. And we see already, the positive effects that some of the measures rolled out by the Ministry of Education had on easier access to remote learning during COVID times. But of course, this is a long journey, and a lot of investments are continued to be needed down the road. But just to give an example of the GIGA financing project, the project of connecting all schools to the internet, this global initiative started in 2019, just on the eve of the pandemic. So I think these are the initiatives and interventions that we really need to fast track, because they can help us bridge the digital divide when it comes to access to learning, computer literacy, and all these important tools and innovations that can help strengthen the human capital base. I also want to recognize that a lot of useful PFM reforms were already on track before COVID started. I spoke earlier about performance-based budgeting, which was rolled out 3 or 4 years ago. And I think typically this is, again, the sort of initiative that can really help us make better decisions for investment that are really targeting the results. I talked a lot about the work that UNICEF does in terms of evidence generation and how these tools and diagnostic works can serve and help the policymakers and other partners in their decision-making processes on investments. So I think we have a lot going already, and it's a matter of staying focused on how we can tap into these opportunities to make them as useful as possible for us and help us address the challenges that we're seeing. That will be it from me. Thank you.
Thank you for the floor. I think I will start from there's something I noticed in the previous presentation. When the presentation was about, I think, recovery, COVID recovery in different financial institutions, if I remember correctly, SMEs and others. What I saw that during COVID, banking sector tried to incentivize their clients, their customers, to use digital services. Okay? And that word of incentive really hit my mind. When you see what happened during COVID, you're still in COVID, okay? But let's speak about 2 previous years. We have seen a tremendous change into what we call mindset of using ICT. For us, we used to train teachers. We have 1,000 teachers that we train. When we trained them before COVID, we expected them to go back to school and they apply what we have trained them on. When we go to observe, in inspection and so on, we saw that time that nothing has changed actually. Even the devices we provide, they just keep it somewhere in the cupboard or still in the box, just like that. But during COVID, in 2020, during school closure, we embarked on fully online training of teachers. And we trained for the 3 months from May to August 2020, about 7,000 teachers. We made sure that they have devices to use. We also provided bundles with internet, and you have seen them being, usually the first chapter to train on is, how to use computer, how to log into like Microsoft Teams or Zoom or any other video tool. And we educate, why do we use this, why is it important, and so on. that first chapter is no longer needed this time. So when we train them, we just start from the second chapter. Because that chapter of mindset and very basic things is already gone because they know. So this again gives us opportunity we have in the sector of education, as far as education is concerned. The opportunity is that now everyone wants to use digital, teaching and learning materials or solution as we can call it. So for edtech companies, this is a great moment. We have to keep the momentum, we keep motivating these users, learners and teachers, by providing user-friendly and great edtech solutions. So we have seen also growing actually into edtech companies for the past few years, whereby edtech companies, just even startups from graduates from EPRCs or universities, whereby they start developing, some solutions, some, let's say, virtual laboratories for sciences. You know that we don't have laboratories for sciences in all schools. Even those where we have physical laboratories have, a lot of protocols and so on. Usually it's risky, but when you start using a virtual lab, it's not risky. It's something you can repeat and repeat. It's cost-effective and so on. So this is a great opportunity, not only in virtual labs, but in other also areas supporting like technical vocational education trainings, whereby virtual reality solutions, this is something great which is emerging actually. And also that was on the soft side of it. When it comes to devices, we also have seen manufacturers who tried to pilot or to make prototypes of devices that can actually, become a normal laptop or computer we used to know, working from small devices that we call embedded systems, and they try to make things that are specifically affordable to us, because one of the challenge is access to device, which is very costly and even very, very expensive, during COVID, due to different things like transport and so on. And this is another venue as well. And connectivity, I think Charlotte also talked about it. Also through PPP, the partnership between public partners, private. This also is another venue whereby I think you have seen in some who are accessing fiber internet through cable, and this cable is it's going with the line of electricity. So we call it overhead fiber. This is something that just came and is, spread across, I think, in Kigali through different companies, maybe Canal Box, MTN, and many others. So this is also another venue whereby in education, private companies may, find even affordable solutions to penetrate internet into schools. Why not also satellite? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much all for this presentation. I think I can open the floor to you because they have interesting stories around human capital, and I think you have also a lot of appetite. We have like 10 minutes left for our probably discussion. I can receive, say, 5 questions. Just can help us to coordinate.
Thank you. I go by the names of William Kwirijiza. I'm a student from University of Kigali, and I would like to thank the presenters for their insightful presentations. I have like 2 questions to Dr. Christine. She did mention something related to school feeding, of which I find it being put in place in generic terms, because school feeding, it's a very good program, but then when it comes to implementation of it, there is a challenge where they have double shifts. So double shifts, let's say you have to go to school, the learners have to go to school from say 7 something to lunchtime, and these kids should be going back home. Then the other shift comes after lunch and go to school. So it brings a conflict, or there is a conflict in there, that when it comes to the contribution of parents, they tend to become hesitant, or they find it not rational, because providing that money for contribution, when they argue that these kids can have food, or they can have they can eat from home. If they had to come to school after lunch, then they should have come from home after eating. If they are going to go back home, then they should also go and eat, because the time is not that bad for them to have food from home. So how do you intend to harmonize that? Do you find it as a challenge? The other thing is the question I would like to put forward. It's about the extent to which the digital learning is effective when it comes to rural areas, because given the wanting infrastructure of digital learning, I think there is a need to look into it, and then we see if indeed can help when it comes to internet connectivity, digital learning, and other measures put in place, if we still have the challenge of infrastructure as far as digital learning is concerned. The other question that I would like to put to Charlotte, she did mention that how they help to reduce stubbornness of children in Rwanda. They support in reducing the stubbornness of children in Rwanda. Yes, stuntedness or child stunted. So I would like to know the factors that justify the child stuntedness in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Moses Mudaheran from University of Chicago. Sairoti, thank you. UNICEF, thanks for funding various sectors of Rwanda, social sector, but I have a few comments I want you to say on which sector in UNICEF performs very well, if so, at which percentage? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sonia, and I would like to directly address my question. My first question to Charlotte. Here in cities, we find a great number of kids. I mean, kids who are in the age of joining nurseries, kindergartens, and yes, nursery schools. But in the villages, in the rural places, you find most kids who are in the age of joining the nurseries, but who don't go to school. But thanks to our government, it has introduced a system, a policy, I think, this year, which is called home-based ECDs. I wanted to ask, which approach do you think should be put in place so that most children in the ages of joining ECDs could join also, so that in the rural places, kids also, they can be found, a great number of kids who join the ECDs. And my second question, I would like to address it to Christian. There has been a system of one laptop per child in the first years, and I think it was a helpful one. But now I think it's not still working as it was working in the first years. And I think computer laboratories in schools, mostly public schools, are still not enough, so that compared to the number of students who are there could have proper technology skills. So do you think one laptop per child approach wasn't effective, so that there could be another approach to replace it? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Calist from RSCCB. I have two questions. Actually, the one is that of one laptop per child. Actually, she asked what I wanted to ask, but I have one thing I wanted to add. The update, if they find it not really helpful, is there any replacement or any other method that they are proposing to help their children to grow with ICT skills? The second question, I asked on the one way of social protection. It's about school feeding. School feeding, you know, after COVID, prices of everything have raised up. So some parents could not afford school feeding fees for their children. So it caused dropouts. So what is your comment about supporting children in terms and their parents in terms of social protection, so that the school dropout could stop? So the third question, in the same line of school feeding, is about data. I'm glad there's someone from statistics. They say in the school feeding program, the average cost of meal is $1.50, $1 francs. I couldn't imagine what kind of food that can cost $1.50, $1 francs. But today, if you work with this data, with big data, would you provide them with the right cost of food so the program can move smoothly? Thank you.
I think we can stop by here because time is not on our side, and this part of this questions. Colleagues are here, and you can probably reach out during the lunchtime. One question?
One
That-
question,
If you allow. One.
Thank you very much. My name is President Gilwao. I have a word of appreciation to REP, who was able to manage education during the COVID. But also I have one question. It goes to Dr. Christine. When she was presenting, I was thinking about yesterday's sessions. Research finding from Bugesera district indicate that girls have low access to technology devices. And again, we have different resolutions saying that technology is among the best solution to almost problems. I have a question. My question is that, how do you monitor education of girls in matter related to technology so that they will also contribute to the development of our country as well as their colleagues who are interested in education, in technology? Thank you.
I think we can close the question session and give the floor to the panelists. I was about to say that during the lunchtime you can take freedom approach each of these good presenters here to probably ask the contacts for more discussion. Over to you. Maybe we start from Christine, is the one who was asking the questions.
Thank you, audience, for questions. I will start from question number one, I think, from Lisa. It's about feeding double shift. Actually, in schools we have double shift. Most of double shift were caused by overcrowding, but new classrooms were built, but so far there could be some schools that are having double shift. And we know also that the claim that you raised, that parents wish that children who are at school half day are supposed to have their lunch at home. We have received the claim from parents, and we trying to see, okay, it's relevant from their opinion, but when the program actually itself started, we really wanted that, we want that even learners that are having half day at school, that they have a meal at school. The motivation is that we are sure that learners are having lunch, and they are also sharing with their peers the lunch. And this is also another sort of, it's not a skill, but it's a culture of sharing that they are also getting from the school. So it's something we really wish that, or we want to happen. But that came also from parents. We kept it and we look into this. If really parents cannot afford, I know that from different programs in social cluster that are supporting parents, will support so that the subsidized is a bit, raised up, so that parents don't come, find this as a burden to them, because this is the only challenge they have. But at least we have these learners having lunch together. They are socializing, and the teacher knows that, the kids in front of me, I'm quite sure they have had lunch. And empty stomach in classroom, brings empty mind. Yeah. So regarding, yes, very interesting question about digital learning in rural areas. Yes, we're still having challenge. As I said, the challenges we have, that comes also with opportunity. The basic infrastructure, and mainly electricity, secondary, internet, and devices. So as a government, what we are doing, I think I will answer this question with the question about the lack of enough smart classrooms, one laptop per child, laptops which are not reaching every learner or every child. So in NST1, we have targets in 2024 to reach at least 84% of all schools accessing internet and having smart classrooms. So another question was that one laptop per teacher is not there anymore, and what has replaced this program? Actually, when you look at this program, which started back in 2008, it was introduced into schools, actually somehow like extracurricular, because that time the curriculum we had was not catering for, digital learning and so on. 2015, when the curriculum was revised and became competence-based curriculum, we explicitly included the ICT subject in secondary schools and primary schools. It's part of what we call SET, Science Elementary Technology. And it was mandatory for teachers to use these devices to teach learners. So when, after having that curriculum, also education sector has set the policy, ICT in education policy, that is governing ICT into teaching and learning across all levels, including starting from early age till higher learning institution. So when you take a look at that ICT education policy, and for reference, even if you Google it, you will just find it, or go to the website of the Ministry of Education in publication. So you will see that the program of one laptop per child was there to provide, targeting to provide that every child a laptop to carry with her or him from school, at home, and so on. However, this was not achieved as it was expected. And reasons were, first of all, the resources to provide to every child, and only the government was injecting the budget. Supporting from parents was almost zero. But also, when you look at the schools that had the program, we've seen sort of loss of devices because of the security of devices. A device is bought by the government, it's in school, and the child takes it at home. Tomorrow it's broken, maybe by his or a brother, or maybe it's stolen. The security from school at home and back, and we found it not efficient when you compare to, I think, Charlotte. She talked about, I think, the portion or the envelope that goes into different sectors when it comes to the budget. We know that the budget is not covering everything we need, but how do we put priorities so that we become efficient? So like that, we shifted. When you look into that policy, the first page, if you read it, the goal for having one laptop per child will be always there. However, in order to be efficient, let us implement smart classrooms into school. And we take those smart classrooms, like we decided to, and we provide everything needed to make it as smart as possible. And then we let learners rotate in those smart classrooms using those devices. Actually, when you look at even their time use of computer at school, it's not all the time, all 8 hours they stay there. I mean, pupils from, let's say, from 7:30 till 5 in the evening. However, we make sure that we are actually working on a study that is showing us the ratio of 1-to-1 computer every day at school. And this is a way that is helping the sharing of resources efficient, so that there's a 1-to-1 access to that computer in a specific time and it's different for every pupil. For young learners, for lower primary, maybe they only need 1 hour per day. For senior 3, senior 2, maybe they only need 3 hours a day. So like that, when you measure the ratio of 1-to-1 in the low resource environment that we are in, then we defined on how these pupils will rotate around those smart classrooms. But the aim, the target of having one laptop per every child, that's our wish all the time. And we also actually call upon parents to support in that program by buying own device at home. I think I talked about the household percentage of, I think, about 12% that access to the digital device like the computer. So together with parents, we think that that aim can be achieved. But also for schools, with the plan we have in the sector strategic plan, which underpins actually NST1, we're aiming at 84% by 2024. I think another question, I think maybe it was addressed to Charlotte, but I think I can say something about it. It's about school feeding, which causes dropout. And mostly, I think there's amount of money. It was addressed to NISR. Like the cost has been raised for food. That's true. And the way government, maybe the money the government injects is not enough. I know that there is an ongoing study to really increase this cost so that it meets the market we have. So the data is already available. We all know that the food has become expensive. So I just to inform you that. And the last question about girls to access technology. So there is a recent data correction we had in schools, and we have seen that almost 50-50 girls, boys in secondary schools, they have the same access into smart classroom. So I can assure you that girls are empowered into technology. Even though we see a gap when they start combinations, where they start to specialize, even at the higher learning, that they tend to go into different other subjects more than into technology. But we also keep raising awareness. We're working with the university graduates. I think the Rawisa, maybe you may know that association. That association helps us. We work together, and it helps us to raise awareness, to show cases for girls, for women who really achieved quite a lot in technology, and we have seen tremendous changes. And when you look at our pioneer schools in technology, for example, the Rwanda Coding Academy, we enroll 50-50%, and we have seen tremendous changes, even the way they perform, the products they've done already, like for example in that school, girls, boys, they really contribute the same way. But we shall keep raising awareness for gender inclusion, and also we actually don't wish that men become somehow shy and then again we go back to raise them. No, we really want everyone to participate. Thank you.
Charlotte, I have 3 questions.
Yes, I've noted them down. Thank you so much. And thank you to the audience for the very good questions. The first one addressed to me was about stunting of children in Rwanda and what are the main factors justifying this. The general analysis made on stunting in Rwanda and in other parts of the world suggests that the main factors contributing to stunting levels are high poverty, low education of mothers, and lack of knowledge on feeding practices, and also lack of access to safe water and good hygiene. So those are traditionally the main factors justifying high stunting rates. Now, the interesting thing in Rwanda is that the DHS results came out recently, and we also had access to the district level stunting rates. And what we observed is that several districts have reduced tremendously their stunting rates, sometimes more than 15% in the last 5 years. I think Nyamagabe was one of the top achievers in this regard. And other districts are stagnating, either continuing with similar levels of stunting or have faced higher levels of stunting compared to 5 years ago. So I know that the National Child Development Agency, with the support of its development partners, is currently undertaking an analysis on the top 4 performing districts and the lower 4 performing districts between the last 2 DHS reports, to understand really what is the story to be told there. And especially for the districts that have performed very well, what are the good practices that can be documented and shared with other districts and with policymakers at central level and with development partners. And I think that will be a very interesting study. The next question was about what sector does UNICEF perform well in and at which percentage? Thank you so much. So maybe I could see here that UNICEF alone doesn't perform in any sector. We work through the government, we are aligned to the national policies and strategies, and it's a collective effort. We support the government in delivering its mandate. We also provide a lot of innovative ideas in the delivery of services to make them more efficient, effective, and as many of you know, a lot of donors and development partners support the social sectors in Rwanda, so it's really a collective effort. But if I could just comment on one sector, since the DHS report came out recently, we saw that the health sector has achieved tremendously well in the past 15 years. But what we now see is that certain indicators are starting to face a bit of a plateau, meaning they are not improving at the same high pace as what we observed in previous surveys. And among these you have indicators of neonatal mortality, infant mortality, but also the fertility rate, which don't show the same level of progress as previously. And the Ministry of Health is having a lot of conversation with its partners about how we can now accelerate and innovate further in the intervention so that we reach a next level of results. And I think a lot of it has to do with further enhancing the quality of care and further delivering services closer to the community. So this is the comment I can make here. When it comes to EC,
decision makers can make informed decisions based on real-time data, which is nowadays not commonly possible. That we get this time we get insights. Maybe the survey will come after like 3 months, but they are complementing ideas we can have before that time. So with big data in place, with administrative data, with all these data sources available, if we make use of them, we will have timely and frequent statistics, which is not the case before embarking on data revolution.
Thank you. Can you help me to thank this group of experts? We are coming to the end of this session. We apologize if it was too long, but I assume it was nice. There are a few things they talked about, or many things, but I think you understood well that there are a lot of going on to support the government to strengthen its financing landscape, to support human capital development, be it education, mainly that was the topic, and then as well as in other sectors. You also understood that technology, digital methodologies are being put at scale to make sure that even the schools located in remote areas benefit from those interventions. You also understood that the data systems is being strengthened to make sure that the emerging technologies also have a place in our data gathering system, data analysis, but also data use. Lastly, for young people, you were given a task to make sure that you leverage the existing data platforms, opportunities to continue making more analysis, which shall further inform decision making. We thank you very much. We look forward to meeting you next time. Thank you.